I've always been a rebel, a bold hacker in a world where privacy is a mirage. My name is Ellen, and at 28 years old, I've become a shadow in the dystopian metropolis of New Hope. This city never sleeps. The LED lights cast a cold glow, and security cameras are on every corner, watching every move. It's as if the city is breathing, pressing down on me, a thick and oppressive air that seeps into my lungs. The totalitarian government that controls everything here feeds on fear. What should be freedom has become a cage, and I am a disguised prisoner. On dark nights, when the city is bathed in a fog of despair, I dive into the system's guts. The constant clicks of the keyboard are my anthem of rebellion. My incursions to expose the government's corruption gave me a sense of power, but with each attempt, I feel their presence, like shadows in a hallway, always one step ahead. The game is far from fair, and I am the only player. One night, as I hacked into the government servers, a notification appeared on my screen, like a venomous snake ready to strike. A new security system was being deployed, and it didn't seem normal at all, more of a trap than protection. Then, an image of a missing persons list flashed across my screen, and my stomach churned. Among the names was Lucas, my friend and accomplice. He had been more than just a partner. He was a part of me. The pain of loss turned into a burning flame of determination. I knew I had to act. Fate was calling me to the abandoned building where the government leaders would gather. The place reeked of mystery and rumors, a cavern of rotten secrets. Upon arrival, a heavy air of despair wrapped around me like a cloak. The walls, covered in strange symbols, seemed to pulse with an evil energy. Every step I took echoed, and I could almost hear the whispers of lost souls in the shadows. It was as if the place was alive, a living organism that breathed pain and despair. As I investigated, I realized the walls were whispering. A whisper that filled me with a palpable fear, as if the city itself was warning me. Then, the lights began to flicker, and I saw a figure emerge from the darkness. It was a woman dressed in white, her empty eyes reflecting the horror of what was to come. She moved with a disturbing grace, passing through walls as if she didn't belong to this world. "They are coming for you," she whispered, her voice like nails scraping across a chalkboard. A chill ran down my spine. I tried to ignore it, but her warning echoed in my mind. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I searched for an exit. I barely escaped, but the feeling of being watched never left me. I returned to the safety of my apartment, but the place now felt more like a cell. And every shadow seemed to have a life of its own. The next morning, with a heavy heart, I tried to warn my friends about what I'd discovered. But one by one, my messages were met with silence. When I finally managed to speak to someone, I learned that each of them had started disappearing. The city was closing in on me, and I was alone in a deadly game. The sense of despair and helplessness grew, and there was nothing I could do to stop what was happening. In the end, I was drawn back to the building, a magnet of horrors I couldn't resist. Inside, the atmosphere was even more oppressive, as if the very air was saturated with pain. And there, between walls smeared with dried blood and the whispering voices, I understood the truth. The woman who warned me was one of the missing, trapped there, doomed to wander among the shadows. Now I am part of a new resistance. I fight against the regime, knowing the government is always one step ahead. Every day is a battle, and the shadows are more than mere illusions. They are witnesses to what we've lost and to what is yet to come. In New Hope, the fight for freedom is bloody, and the price to pay may be your very life. But I can't give up. The city is full of secrets, and I'm the one who will uncover them, even if it means facing the horror that lurks in the darkness. My name is Tomas Vieira, and I am a history teacher in Ciudadela, a suffocating, isolated city, surrounded by towering walls that seem intent on imprisoning not just the body, but the mind and spirit of everyone who lives here. Education is a weapon, and the schools are disguised prisons, where truth is an empty word, manipulated by those who control the oppressive regime. Knowledge is a poison, and the students are programmed to accept the official version of events, never daring to question it. The school's walls are gray and cold, and the hallways echo the heavy footsteps of students, always watched by guards with sharp, penetrating eyes. Behind the facade of an obedient educator, I keep a secret diary. In it, I record everything forbidden, The real history of the world, the lies we are forced to teach, and the echoes of silenced voices. One night, as I reviewed my notes under the weak flicker of a dying lamp, I received an anonymous warning in the form of a letter. The words, written in shaky handwriting, sent a chill through my veins. What you know could cost you your life. The signature was just a symbol, a mark I didn't recognize, but it burned in my mind like a sign of danger. Curiosity became an uncontrollable urge, and I decided to investigate. The clues led me to a hidden library, a place many believed had been destroyed by the government to erase knowledge and doubt. Upon entering, I was engulfed by a heavy atmosphere, the air thick with the smell of old books and dust. The shelves were filled with forgotten volumes, keepers of secrets long buried. As I explored, I found a dusty book that recounted the stories of people who had disappeared after questioning the regime. The words seemed to whisper, telling tales of despair and resistance, each page a warning. That night, as I tried to sleep, I was jolted awake by a presence that chilled me to the bone. A figure of a woman emerged from the shadows of my room, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly intensity. "Tomas," she whispered, her voice echoing like a lament, "they are coming for you." Fear spread through me like poison. She warned me about a secret group fighting to expose the truth, but not without mentioning that they were hunted by the regime. My heart raced as I realized I was in danger, but the flame of truth burned stronger than the fear. I decided to join the group, driven by the hope that together we could dismantle the lies surrounding us. But betrayal was lurking. Someone I trusted gave me up, and the world I knew crumbled into a nightmare. I was captured and taken to an unknown place, a clandestine laboratory where prisoners were subjected to horrifying experiments. The air was thick with the smell of blood and the echoes of agonized screams, and the reality I once knew became a labyrinth of pain and despair. In the darkness, I realized the walls had ears. They listened to our pleas, our fears, and when the lights went out, the truth became even more obscure. But there was something inside me that refused to be silenced. When the shadows seemed to consume everything, I began whispering to the other prisoners, trying to warn them about the reality of what was happening. Over time, I became one of the whispers, a voice within the cold walls of the laboratory, trying to guide those who could still escape. In the end, my identity dissolved into the darkness, and the truth became a distant memory. I was trapped between life and death, between freedom and oppression, an echo of warning for those who dared to question. Cittadella, the city that had imprisoned me, now turned into a maze of illusions. And even as I became a whisper, the fight for truth continued, though I was no longer there to see it. My name is Juliana Martins, and I am an art student in a world that has forgotten what it means to be creative. In the oppressive future I live in, art is an offense, a crime that can cost you your freedom or even your life. The city, with its monotonous, gloomy structures, is a maze of grays and browns, where the only visible color is the sadness that fills the air. The streets are deserted, and the silence is broken only by the footsteps of patrols, always on the lookout for any sign of rebellion. Since I was a child, I dreamed of becoming an artist, but in a place where expression is taboo, I hid within my inner world. My sketchbooks were always locked away, guarded like secret treasures. One night, while working on a clandestine mural in a dark alley, something changed. The shadows around me began to writhe as if they had a life of their own, watching me, waiting. It was then that I looked into the mirror of an abandoned shop and saw a woman. Her sad, profound gaze mesmerized me, and the feeling that she was calling to me grew stronger. It was as if she were trapped within the glass, yearning to be free. That night, I returned home with a tightness in my chest, a sense that something was about to happen. The next day, I received an unexpected summons to meet with the city's leaders. With a knot in my stomach, I sat in a room surrounded by walls that seemed eager to swallow me whole. They were concerned about the growing resistance to the oppression and warned me of the dangers of continuing to make art. But their words only fueled my determination. As I left, a wave of despair washed over me, and when I passed the shop again, the woman in the mirror was closer, as if she were materializing. "Release the art," she whispered, her voice echoing in my mind. "The world needs color." I decided to risk everything. I organized a secret art exhibition in an abandoned warehouse, a rebellious act against the regime that suffocated us. The works were vibrant, explosions of life amidst the monotony. When night fell, the space was filled with people who also longed for freedom, their eyes shining with hope. But what began as a whisper of hope quickly turned into a scream of terror. The doors were broken down, and a patrol stormed in, taking away the joy that had filled the air. Panic spread like wildfire, and I knew I had to escape, but the crowd was trapped, and I became just another among the captured. I was condemned for my artistic crimes, dragged into a cold, dark cell. In solitude, pain and despair tried to consume me, but then the woman from the mirror returned, this time in my dreams. She encouraged me not to give up, to keep fighting. "Art is eternal," she said. "It lives inside you. Let color flood your walls, even here." And so, I decided to rebel. With the paint I had hidden in my cell, I began leaving messages of hope on the prison walls. Each brushstroke was a silent scream of freedom, a reminder that art could not be erased. The darkness tried to swallow me, but I refused to succumb. The prison walls became my canvas, and my indomitable spirit turned into a legend among the rebels. The story ended, but my message spread. In the darkness, a new generation of artists began to rise, inspired by my final act of defiance. The city's gray walls began to come alive again, and the fight for the freedom of art became a deafening whisper. The regime that tried to silence us was about to learn that, even in the shadows, creativity and courage will always find a way to shine. My name is Rick, a former cop, forced into retirement by a corruption that spread like a plague through the system. I saw it all, years of service that drained me, leaving behind only a skeleton of the law, a city where gangs rule the streets and power is just a facade. The sky, always dark and choked by thick clouds, is a perfect reflection of the decay that's taken over here. I walked away, but this damn city never really lets you leave. Then the murders began. Brutal, cold, calculated. The victims? Always from my old neighborhood. I knew something about this wasn't a coincidence. The smell of death, that weight in the air, it was like the past was trying to drag me back. I decided to investigate on my own. I knew I was walking into a trap, but I couldn't just stand by. Not now. The streets are worse than I remember. Every step I take echoes between the narrow alleys, and the graffiti on the walls seems to stare right back at me. They're not just tags. They tell stories of blood, of despair, of souls taken before their time. My feet carried me to the crime scenes, as if drawn by some invisible force. And then the visions started. I don't know if it's my mind playing tricks on me or something deeper, but what I saw, they were shadows, but not ordinary shadows. They were faces, whispers of people who died without justice. And they spoke to me, begging for vengeance. The visions grew stronger. I could barely tell what was real and what wasn't. I was back at that damned crossroads between the present and a past that never let me go. It was night, and I was in my apartment, trying to piece together this sick puzzle. The smell of coffee and cigarettes filled the air when, out of nowhere, a presence appeared. A woman, pale as death, with eyes so deep they froze me in place. She didn't speak at first, just stared at me. Those eyes, I felt like they were pulling me into a place where time didn't exist. Finally, she whispered, "He's coming for you." The words echoed in my mind, and before I could react, she was gone, as if she'd never been there. But the feeling lingered, a chill down my spine that wouldn't leave me. That night was long, and the visions even worse. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the killer. Not some random stranger, but someone I knew. Someone I should have buried a long time ago. But he was alive, and he was close. I could feel his breath on my neck, even when he wasn't there. And the killings continued, each one closer to my home. I knew the time would come to face him. The last shred of sanity I had was hanging by a thread, and the truth of what was happening crushed me. Every memory, every name in my notes, all pointed to an inevitable showdown. And when I finally found him, the shock was indescribable. He wasn't just any killer. He was someone I knew intimately, someone from my past, someone I betrayed. The betrayal, it hung in the air like a punch. He looked at me with a smile that chilled my blood, as if he'd always known it would end like this. The fight was brutal. There was no glory, just the rawness of violence that reminded me why I'd left the force. I was beaten, my flesh torn by a cold blade, but I still had one last card to play. With my final effort, I exposed the truth, all of it. The killer, the murders, the corruption behind it all. But it came at a price. As I lay bleeding on the cold ground, I knew my fight was over. The truth would come out, but I wouldn't live to see it spread. And then, in my last breath, as my eyes closed and the world faded to black, something unexpected happened. It wasn't the end. I could feel it. I became one of them. A shadow, one of the lost souls that had haunted me for so long. But now, it was me walking among the dark alleys, between the graffitied walls, seeking justice where the law had failed. My name is Jade. I'm 35 years old, mother of 2 beautiful children, and until recently all I wanted was a quiet life. But this world doesn't allow that. Not here. Not in this place where thinking differently is treason, where any attempt at freedom is buried before it's even born. The city is a maze of suffocating buildings, with guards on every rooftop, every window. Their gaze is always present. No one escapes. It all started like a spark. I couldn't just sit by anymore, watching my children grow up under this oppressive regime, where every word is monitored, every thought controlled. I joined a small, almost invisible group of activists. Our meetings were secret, driven by the desperation to try to do something, anything. We handed out leaflets, organized protests, but we knew the government was always lurking, one step away from crushing us. One night, after a protest, something changed. My dreams, once disturbed by reality, became living nightmares. They weren't ordinary dreams. I saw my friends being taken away one by one, dragged into oblivion, their faces twisted in pain, their screams. It was as if the walls of my room were whispering their names. But there was more. There was him. At first, I only saw him in the shadows of my dreams. A man in a dark suit, always standing in some corner, watching. He didn't say much, just stared at me with those empty eyes, as if he knew everything I had done. And then on one of those nights, he started to speak. His voice was soft, controlled, but every word that left his mouth made my stomach turn. He talked about power, about control, and how everything I was doing was useless. "Give up, Jade," he whispered. "You're alone. You'll always be alone." I started waking up in the middle of the night, cold sweat dripping down, his voice still echoing in my head. My children slept in the rooms next to mine, innocent, unaware of the darkness that seemed to close in on us. I was breaking inside, questioning whether it was worth continuing. Then the attack came. We were in one of our meetings, trying to plan our next move. It all happened so fast. Doors kicked in, screams, the sound of boots crushing the floor. My friends, my companions being dragged away just like in my nightmares. And me, I ran. I ran like I've never run before, feeling the biting cold of the night on my face, fear pounding in my chest. I didn't look back. I was a coward, but I was also a survivor. I hid, but the regime doesn't forget. The city became a suffocating labyrinth, where every corner seemed to swallow any trace of hope. The man from my dreams was no longer just a presence in my nightmares. I saw him in the streets, in window reflections, in the empty faces of the guards. He was everywhere, watching, waiting. The ghosts of my friends haunt me, their eyes filled with pain and disappointment. I can't forget what happened that night. I can't forget how I failed them, but I also can't stop. Not now. Loneliness is my only companion. I trust no one. Every sound, every movement is a threat, a reminder that I'm being hunted. But it doesn't matter. If I'm alone, so be it. If I have to fight alone, I will. And then something changed. The voices of my dead friends started to appear again, but now, not in nightmares. They were with me when I was awake. I don't know if I'm going insane or if this is real, but each of those voices guided me. They told me not to give up. They told me to keep going, even when everything seemed lost. I'm what's left. I'm the last one. And now I'm a legend. They speak of me in whispers, murmuring my name in dark alleys where the resistance still lives. The government tries to erase me, to make me disappear, but they can't touch me, because I'm not just a person anymore. I'm the echo of all those they tried to silence. I am Jade, and I'm fighting until the end.